Okay, chat, we're gonna get started. I wanted to start talking about Alaska for the next 2 weeks. You've got me today and you've got me next week, and then I'm gone for 2 Wednesdays. So I didn't want to start anything crazy. So I kind of wanted to, we're gonna cover very basic stuff about Alaska today, kind of ecosystem stuff on a very big scale. Listen guys, I know you know Alaska is huge, but I don't know if you know how huge Alaska is. So we're gonna do some very general stuff about Alaska this week, and then next week we are going to talk about glaciers. So today is going to be a very general introduction to Alaska's ecosystems with the disclaimer, as I've noticed, how cool they are. Exactly, glaciers are awesome. Alaska is huge, and one presentation won't even begin to scratch the surface of Alaska's many ecosystems and the animals that live there. So, as somebody said, they went to Alaska and it was the most exciting 7 days of their lives. I lived in Alaska for over a year, and I did not do nearly enough traveling around the state of Alaska. We're gonna talk about how big it is. We're gonna talk about why you need so many trips or so much time. I went to see glaciers part of my 7 days trip in Alaska. They are simply wonderful. And there's so many different types of glaciers, which we're gonna mention today, but we're not gonna go into huge detail about them. So this is the intro to Alaska. These are some of the places that I've been. These are in Girdwood. This is up off the Seward Highway. Sometimes you see moose up here, is very exciting. And then this is also actually off the Seward Highway. One of my friends lives here. So this is like where she walks her dog very casually. Alaska is really beautiful. I was working in Alaska. I worked at the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center. That is where I met Connor. So chat, first question. I know when I was talking about making presentations, I was asking you guys how basic you wanted it to be, and everybody was like, we feel like we've got the basics. So we're gonna see, we're gonna put you guys to the test today. What's an ecosystem? This is one of those things, I actually talked to Connor about this morning, where you're like, I know what an ecosystem is, right? You guys know what an ecosystem is. You know. Different plants and animals working together, that's pretty good. Relationship between different things being in a set climate, pretty good. Basically high school but ecology. Collection of organisms, yeah. So it's one of those things that you know, but it's like weird to talk to somebody about. For whatever reason, it's just very strange. So ecosystems are made up of 2 primary components. Oh, I lost my, 2 primary components. We've got our biotic factors, which are our living things, right? You've got plants, you've got animals, you've got fungi, you've got microorganisms. And your biotic factors drive the flow of energy and nutrient cycling in an ecosystem. And then you also have abiotic factors, which are non-living components, like sunlight, water, soil, temperature, and together, the abiotic factors influence behavior of the living things, right? So you've got producers, consumers, decomposers, and they all work together in one ecosystem. Holy biology flashbacks, welcome. Welcome. And you guys know there's different types of ecosystems. There's forests, there's deserts, there's grasslands, there's tundra, there's freshwater, marine, there's coastal. There's many, 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 many. Took the words right out of my mouth. You guys knew exactly where I was going with that. So everybody feels good? You know what an ecosystem is. This is kind of the basics for today. This is what we're gonna go over. We're keeping it simple. We're gonna go over some just really neat Alaska facts because Alaska is incredible. We're gonna go over the tundra. Tundra. We're gonna go over the boreal forest, kind of Alaska's interior, and we're gonna go over the coast, which is obviously all of this. We're gonna focus primarily on here. I did not get really into the Aleutian Islands on this presentation, so sit tight. These are some cool Alaska facts. Alaska is 586,412 square miles of land. I did not do the kilometers in that one, I apologize. It's 2.5 times the size of Texas. As of 2024, they had a population of 740,133 people, which makes it the state with the lowest population density in the nation. It's also like 12 times the state of New York and like over 400 times the state of Rhode Island. It's giant. Maps do no justice, none. The maps we saw in school, forget about it. Toss them out the window. Alaska has over 3 million lakes and 12,000 rivers. That's a lot of water. 8 national parks. And what's very interesting about these national parks, chat, only 2 of them are accessible by road, which is wild. So you've got Denali National Park and Preserve, Gates of the Arctic National Park and Preserve, which is the most remote national park in the country. You can either fly in or you can hike in. You've got Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve, Katmai National Park and Preserve, Kenai Fjords National Park, Kobuk Valley National Park, Lake Clark National Park and Preserve, and Wrangell St. Elias National Park and Preserve. So many beautiful places. You've got 46,600, I put 40,000 plus miles of shoreline here, 46,600 miles of tidal shoreline according to NOAA. That's so much. It is more than the United States everywhere else combined. Denali is amazing. I have been to Denali. Would recommend. Incredibly biodiverse. Over 1,000 species of vertebrates, sometimes in huge numbers. There are something like 30 odd herds of caribou. Sometimes they number in like 900,000, so like almost 1 million of these animals. Bald eagles, Alaska is notorious for being the highest populated place for bald eagles. Home to more than 470 species of birds, many of which are migratory, which is very cool, because when you think of Alaska, when you think of Alaska, what do you think? Freedom state, the last frontier, right? That's what I remember it being called when I moved out there. Cold, oil, polar bears, cold, bears and moose, not birds, fair, glaciers. So yeah, lots of cold. We're getting lots of cold, which we're gonna talk about today. Bison, excellent. Connor and I did some work with bison. Mountains, empty and cold. Sledding with huskies, isolated, northern lights, $20 bread. That's true, a lot of stuff has to be brought up, which does make the cost of living in Alaska quite high. Big. So yeah, and then also 5% of it's covered in glaciers, which I put in here. Next week's topic, earthquakes, yes. Tsunamis, yes. 90%, this is a shout out to Miranda, Randy, and her sea otters. 90% of the world's population of sea otters live off the Alaskan coastline, which is just pretty cool. We're moving on to this very, very cool map that's not really going to influence anything, but I just wanted to show it to you because it's very, very cool. So according to the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, we recognize 32 distinct ecoregions in Alaska, which is crazy. So we have polar, we have Arctic tundra, and we've got coastal plains, Brooks Range, Bering tundra, subarctic tundra, boreal forests, so your temperate continental, and then your temperate coastal. But like, look at this, this is crazy. But you can see why it makes sense the way that we're breaking it up the way we did. So you can see these big patches of blue and purple, that's gonna be your tundra. You can see this big patch of like brown and green, that's your boreal forest. And then down here, you've got these reds, that's where we're gonna talk about our temperate coastal. So an ecoregion, I looked up the definition of ecoregion because I wanted to know how different it was, so I'm going to read you that definition. According to the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, an ecoregion is an area of land and water containing vegetation communities that share species and ecological dynamics, environmental conditions, and interactions that are critical for their long-term persistence. So ecoregions, very cool. This is the first one we're going to talk about. We're gonna talk about the tundra. All right, chat, do you guys know anything about the tundra? Do you guys know anything about the tundra? Extremely cold. It's in Minecraft, it's cold. Moose are beautiful and super majestic and super fascinating, and you probably, like when I talk about moose, which will inevitably happen when we permafrost, it's got no trees. You guys are doing great, you know so much about the tundra. Cold and dry, flat and dry. All right, so here we are. When you're moving out of the interior of Alaska, you're moving to its northern and western coast, you hit tundra. Hooray, best Minecraft biome. Tundra refers to treeless landscape. That is correct. Characterized by long, cold winters and short, chilly summers. And there are different types of tundra. So the landscape of tundra is largely characterized by low shrubs, mosses, sedges, and lichens. I cannot wait to talk to you guys about caribou. This entire presentation when I was making my notes, I was like, I just want to talk about caribou here. And then I was like, I just want to talk about them here. And then I was like, keep it together. You're going to do a separate presentation probably on caribou, which you probably won't see when you go to Alaska. But they're so cool to talk about, so we're gonna talk about them. The word tundra refers to treeless landscapes. Seasons are shaped by the position of the Earth with regard to the sun, right? We know this. But if you imagine how far north Alaska is, in the summer when Alaska is tilted towards the sun, the days are very, very long, but the sun's energy arrives at a very shallow angle, right? So it still doesn't get warm. It's cold here. It's cold here all the time. In the winter, when Alaska is tilted away from the sun, the Arctic regions may hardly see the sunrise above the horizon line. So in some cities like Barrow, I did not catch what it's called now, the city formerly known as Barrow, the northernmost US city, the height of winter can see about 2 months of complete darkness. There are different types of tundra. There is Arctic tundra, which is high latitude tundra, and that occurs in north and south, so latitude runs. So Arctic tundra, high latitude tundra, so you've got north and south. So in the Arctic Circle, you're looking at Alaska, you're looking at Canada, Greenland, Iceland, Scandinavia, and Russia. And then you also have alpine tundra, which occurs at high elevations, so think high mountaintops, right? I did not look much into southern hemisphere tundra. That is completely different. Like, you can read about Antarctica. Antarctica gets much colder, and the wildlife in the Antarctic is primarily held at the coast, right? So it is very different from your Arctic Circle tundra. Very different. Tundra characteristics. What makes the tundra? So what makes the tundra? Obviously, we've talked about the lack of trees, but does anybody want to hazard to guess why? Why there's a lack of trees? Windy, cold, soil, too cold, permafrost. Yeah. So there's lots of factors that limit tree growth in the tundra. And you're looking at permafrost, which is a deep layer of frozen ground which prevents root growth, which means that all of those roots that would anchor and support those trees, they're not there. They can't be there because the ground is literally frozen. Cold soil slows decomposition and nutrient cycling. The average annual temperatures are between 10 and 20 degrees Fahrenheit and -12 to -6 Celsius. Cold. Yes. They will ice burn. Yes. So you've got continuous cold and permafrost, and also you've got the wind coming off of the coast. You've got no trees to slow that wind down, so it is windy and it is cold. And then you have, again, the minimal precipitation. So yeah, it just be cold and windy. Strong abrasive winds desiccate plant tissue. Rainfall and snowfall is moderate throughout the year, but more than half the year the water's frozen, so it cannot be taken up by plants. Though it does thaw a little bit in the heat of the summer, if you will. The busiest time on the tundra is during the short summer melts, when a mosaic of wet and dry tundra provide more resources for the animals that spend time there. Another cool fact about caribou, they spend their summers on the tundra because the wind helps with mosquitoes. What adaptations are necessary for survival? Do you guys want to take a guess at some of these? Some of the animals that call the tundra home, we've got ptarmigans, we've got muskox, we've got snowy owls, we've got Arctic foxes, we've got grizzly bears, we've got caribou, we've got wolves, we've got ravens, we've got ground squirrels, we've got so many animals. Insulation, fat storage, camouflage, small ears, head wig, white coloring to hide and camouflage. Caribou eat lichen, they do! They are specialized lichen consumers. Ptarmigans, white camo in the winter, thick fur. Yeah, so you guys know. You guys know. Some of these. Warm winter coats, heat-efficient body shapes, camouflage, and hibernation. So animals like bears and ground squirrels, they're going to use hibernation to escape the coldest parts of the winter when the food is the most scarce. You've got camouflage. So the Arctic fox is a great example of this, where their coat will actually change colors from summer to winter so that they can blend into the landscape and execute their camouflage better. This change is influenced and propelled by the difference in the length of the day and hormones. So this is Arctic fox summer, Arctic fox winter. You can also appreciate their heat-efficient body shapes. So any time you see animals with like these long limbs and these long skinny tails and these big ears, all of that loses heat, right? So the animals that you see in these landscapes, they're going to be a little bit more compact so that they can save that heat. The Arctic fox is such a cute. Yeah, this was one that was like, he's got a little collar and a tag. I think it was in Russia. So that's fun. Yeah, I want to talk about the mosquitoes because it is pretty crazy, these little notes about the mosquitoes. Does anybody know about mosquitoes in the tundra? Not a mosquito fan. No. So I told you guys how cold the tundra gets. What if I also told you that the largest Alaskan mosquito, which is, I'm not going to say this correctly, but the Culistida alaskensis, or the snow mosquito, overwinters as an adult? Is anybody shocked by that? Antifreeze bugs. Natural antifreeze, yes. Yes. Mosquitoes are pollinators, we do need them, I'm sorry. Yeah, so these mosquitoes will actually overwinter as adults in the Alaskan tundra, and they will usually overwinter underneath snow, underneath leaf litter, beneath loose tree bark, or in dead tree stumps. They are the first species to emerge each spring, and they usually emerge from mid to late April. So it's not just these mosquitoes that have this ability to sustain life in these very, very cold, unforgiving temperatures. Many insects, including mosquitoes, have the ability to survive freezing temperatures. The freezing tolerance is accomplished by two different processes. In the first process, the insect's body water is replaced by glycerol, which is a form of carbohydrate, and that acts as an antifreeze and keeps the body cells from rupturing when temperatures reach their freezing point. So like they are actually frozen. In the second process, which is called supercooling, the insect's body temperature is lowered below the freezing point without its fluids solidifying. Overwinter basically means like they just hibernate while it's not like they don't hibernate like we think of bears and stuff, but their bodies essentially like they just freeze and then they come back to life when they thaw. Yeah. As a mosquito hater, this does not spark joy. Yeah. Which is pretty neat, right? We can all appreciate that that's pretty cool. Just another thing to love about bugs. Like that one frog species, which we're gonna talk about as well, the wood frog. Yes, nature is metal, indeed. Bugs are way better at surviving everything, yes. All right, so this is a little bit about the tundra, a little bit about the animals that live there, very cool. We love the tundra. Now we're going to talk about the boreal forest. So we're going to go back inland, come off the coast. Still these long, cold winters, right? I know the frog. Excellent. Boreal forests account for about 1/3 of all forested areas on Earth, which is pretty cool. I didn't know that about boreal forests until I was learning about that. The frog that freezes itself to stand by instead of hibernate. Yeah. There's another word, I don't think it applies to, I didn't read it in regards to insects, but I know that like hummingbirds do a form of hibernation that's called torpor. We'll talk about that when we talk about hummingbirds at some point, but hummingbirds have such high metabolisms that they also have to like chill out and kind of shut some things down so they don't starve on the regular because their metabolisms are so high. So these types of forests play a significant role in water and carbon cycles. So the roots of the trees bind to the soil, they help prevent erosion, they help prevent flooding. Precipitation isn't high, but the water evaporates slowly because it's still very, very cold. And it will collect in these treeless areas because the forest is not continuous. The conifers, which largely thrive here, not entirely conifers, but lots of conifers, where these trees kind of break as they are not continuous forests. You get water that pools in those areas, forming bogs or what they called muskegs. Dead plant matter slowly turns into peat again because of that cold, nothing happens really fast, which creates areas of peat that store more carbon than any other ecosystem in the world. So this is the boreal forest. Covers 6.6 million square miles, 17 million square kilometers, and stretches across North America, Northern Europe, and Russia. So, long cold winters still, short cold summers. The average annual temperatures in the boreal forest are typically 20 to 35 Fahrenheit, -7 to 2 degrees centigrade. Growing seasons are still very short, typically as short as 130 days. So can anybody then tell me why conifers thrive? in the boreal forest. You've still got a short growing season. You still have discontinuous permafrost. So the ground is not entirely frozen. That again, that contributes to the formation of these bogs and peatlands because where it acts as a barrier, where the water cannot penetrate because of the permafrost, you get water that's stored up there, but there are areas where it is well draining. So again, you get that creation of a very diverse landscape because they're awesome, evergreen. They don't need to grow leaves each year. Yeah, they don't drop their needles. So evergreen conifers thrive here. That includes species primarily of spruce, fir, and pine. The resin of these trees acts like antifreeze, and the shape of these trees helps to prevent the accumulation of snow. So again, those like perfect little whoop, whoop, because they stay hard. They're locked in, year-round locked in. You need the ability to photosynthesize year-round. Because again, you're still short on those growing seasons. These conifers also typically have pretty shallow root systems, so they can grow in these places. There's lots of very, very cool. Nicole is nerding out so hard right now. But that's exactly correct, and that's what makes them so cool, right? The boreal forest is also specifically adapted to fire. Like black spruces are specifically adapted to fire, which is a very, very, you can answer all the questions. Get in there. Do you know why the boreal forest is specifically adapted to fire? Throw it out there. They regrow easily from pine cones. Black spruce makes up much of the forest, and burning allows for a variety of landscapes of the young and old trees, but black spruce trees, I must have put it on a different slide. But essentially their cones at the top where their seeds are, they're literally like activated by the heat of fire. So like when they get hot, they're like, boom, fire, send them out, which is pretty cool. And then, yeah, like I said, you get these mix of young and old trees in these forests, which is awesome. Serotinous, that's the word. Look at, she knows. They know. They know. What plants and animals call the boreal forest in Alaska home? Lots of these guys. So these are, again, this is kind of the trees. You can see they're long, slender shapes that are very well designed for not accumulating snow. You got your wood frog, you've got Canada lynx. I want you to look at some of these guys. You got your gray wolf, you've got your snowshoe hare. This is again that camouflage that we talked about here, this adaptation where you've got your summer and your winter. And again, you've got caribou, which is pretty awesome. I know I already mentioned caribou, they spend their summers on the tundra, but they migrate inland to the boreal forest in the winter. The adaptations. Do you guys see anything more here? I know look at them paws. That's exactly correct. That's where I was going. So you can see the size of the feet on some of these guys, right? Size of the feet. You can't see the caribou feet, but caribou are they also have this very cool adaptation that has to do with their feet. Reindeer are just domesticated caribou. Yeah. So basically these guys have built-in snowshoes. Exactly, fuzzy snow boots, big murder mittens. Yeah, boots with the fur. They have built-in snowshoes that allow them to walk on the snow. Lynx are only, I think our heaviest lynx that we cared for in Alaska was 25 pounds. These feet are like the size of a mountain lion's feet. These are big murder mittens. They are designed to walk on snow. And caribou also have these huge, they can splay their toes, again, to create kind of like a natural snowshoe, which is very cool as well. And then obviously the snowshoe hare too. And then you've got your warm coats, right? You've got your wolves, you've got your lynx. These coats are incredibly warm. You've got hibernation, or in this case, like literal freezing for the wood frog. Like how we use snowshoes in deeper snow, exactly. Which is pretty cool. And then in addition to the snowshoe hare, you also see this color change in ermines, and there was one more that I missed. Ptarmigans, sorry. Haven't mentioned much about ptarmigans, but I need to talk about ptarmigans some more. Wood frogs are another one of those animals that like literally freeze. So it's very similar to the carbohydrates in the blood that prevent their vessels from bursting when they freeze. I have more boreal forest kiddos. More. We've got moose, and moose are incredibly large. So these guys, when it comes to deep snow, their bodies are just tall enough that they just They're just above, which is pretty cool. We've got brown bears and black bears. We have sandhill cranes, which are a migratory species. This is well established that sandhill cranes migrate to the boreal forests of Alaska in the spring, which is incredible. We'll love that. And then we also have, this is a northern hawk owl. I just wanted to include a bird of prey, so I picked this guy. As far as plants goes, or trees, we do have the black spruce that we talked about. Deciduous trees like birch and aspen, though in the minority, when there are fires, they do bounce back quickly post-fire. We've got willow, blueberry, shrub birch, fireweed, lots of plant life as well. And then I did want to touch on, yes, migratory species like the sandhill crane, but the wetland areas of the boreal forest are host to literally millions of birds in the spring before they return to southern states in Mexico in the fall. Moose, Sweden's national animal, is so huge. They're so huge. It's another one of those things where like you just can't conceptualize how big moose are. They are massive. Yeah, one of the reasons that they don't, at least where I was in Alaska, they didn't salt the roads because the salt would bring animals, wildlife to the road. And it's actually more dangerous to hit a moose because of the height that they are. Because if you hit a moose, it'll come directly through your windshield because they're so tall. So it's actually more dangerous to hit a moose than it is to like drive your car off the road or to collide with another car. Fun! Yeah, fun. The last region that we're going to talk about is the temperate coast. I think when I was reading through some of the things to do this presentation, it said something like the largest moose on record was like 7 feet tall at the shoulder and almost like 2,000 pounds. That's wild. At the shoulder, yeah. And that's one of the things that, I mean, moose are well adapted in these conditions. Like they live in these very, very cold places. They have a harder time in warmer weather staying cool than they do in cold weather staying warm. So we're gonna talk a little about the temperate coast of Alaska. Southeast Alaska is part of the North American temperate rainforest. Did anybody think they were gonna hear the word rainforest in this presentation? No, I did. Rainforest. So cool. Temperate rainforest, my beloved. That's my biome. That's what I love. Best rainforest. Oh, yes. So Southeast Alaska is part of the North American temperate rainforest. And this is a rainforest that spans 2,500 miles of coastline, extends from California through British Columbia and to the eastern edge of the Kodiak Archipelago in south central Alaska. Temperate rainforests are cooler, but just as wet as their tropical counterparts, receiving up to 200 inches of rain per year. And I will tell you, from living in Portage, Alaska, that the months of September and October, my gosh, the rain. My gosh, the rain. We just gave up eventually. We just gave up. We were like, you know what? We all have one set of rain gear. It's soaked all the time. You take it off soaking wet, you put it on in the next morning, it's still soaking wet. You just stay. You just stay rainy. It was an experience. I built a lot of character in those months, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. These forests are generally found at elevations below 2,500 feet and are composed of Sitka spruce, western hemlock, yellow cedar, western red cedar, mountain hemlock, and shore pine. Nicole, input. These forests are also home to some of the world's oldest and tallest trees. It was pretty neat reading about some of the trees here too, because a lot of them still have pretty shallow root systems and they can be like tall, like 200 feet tall. Yes, I did read that, Nicole. Lodgepole pine, yes. And so part of the characteristics of these forests is like how when these trees do go down, when they get blown down, that's a huge part of the rainforest. And like just a big characteristic, like it's a really important part is when these big trees come down, the holes that they leave, which is pretty cool. In these areas, permafrost is absent. You get, because you're on the coast, you get cooler winters and more mild summers. Yeah. You also get glaciers here. Very exciting. This area here is not the whole area that we're talking about, but this is the Tongass National Forest, which is awesome. I would really like to go. We're going to talk briefly about the Tongass, and we're going to talk about the Chugach National Forest as well. Very briefly, but they're both here. So this is Tongass. If you were to like look up and like if this is Alaska, right? This is like here. This is this area, and then you've got the Aleutian Islands out here. We're going to talk about the Chugach, which is like kind of up here. Bam. These are just some pictures that I wanted to include because I love glaciers and I love Alaska. So the Alaskan rainforest is home to at least 40 species of land mammals, more than 200 species of birds, 5 amphibians, and 1 reptile, the garter snake. So this is part of the Chugach National Forest. This is part of the Tongass. This is a tidewater glacier. This is Aalic Glacier. This is out in Seward. And this, I believe, is Exit Glacier, which is also in Seward, but not a tidewater glacier. The Tongass spans 17 million acres, and together with the adjacent Great Bear Rainforest in British Columbia, forms the world's largest temperate rainforest. Take that, rainforests. Heck yeah. How old are these glacier photos? I do not know. This one, I think Exit Glacier has receded a great deal. Probably since this photo. The Tongass is sometimes referred to as America's salmon forest. So according to the U.S. Forest Service, the Tongass includes roughly 17,000 miles of clean, undammed creeks, rivers, and lakes that provide optimal spawning and rearing conditions for the region's wild Pacific salmon and trout. All 5 of North America's Pacific salmon species are found in the Tongass National Forest. The Chinook, the coho, the pink, the sockeye, and the chum salmon. And they're able to support these salmon numbers due to the large trees standing on these thousands of inlets that make up the forest coastline. These streams are kept cool and clean by the trees, allowing the salmon to return from the sea to lay their eggs in the same place where they once hatched. And these fish move up the stream. They bring important nutrients from the ocean into the forest, and once the salmon spawn, they pass away, and their eggs and carcasses provide nutrients to the forest. Whee! Also, note here, I did not get into the marine life off the coast. So if anybody was excited to hear about whales, I apologize. That will be a different time. But we are going to talk about, this is my last slide, we're just going to talk about some of the animals that call these rainforests home. There are so many. The diversity of the temperate rainforest is truly incredible. I actually thought I had way more notes on it than I do, but that's okay. That's okay for today. We're going to talk about these guys. And we're going to end here. Whales confirmed, though. I miss the nature in Alaska. I don't miss feeling really isolated. Yeah, that's fair. These are some of the kiddos that call it home, and this is a doll sheep, shout out doll sheep. This is one of Alaska's big 5. They are not found in the Tongass National Forest, but they are found in the Chugach National Forest. And they are, like I said, one of Alaska's big 5, so they're one of the animals that people go to see when they're in Alaska. You got your salmon represented up here. You've got your Kodiak bears. Interesting reading about bears. These are of course, the Fat Bear Week bears, the notorious Fat Bear Week bears. Doll sheep are big. Yes, they are. And I was reading about brown bears and the differences between the coastal and the Kodiak and the grizzly bears, and what that genetic difference actually is, and why these bears are so different size-wise, but not really all that different genetically. It's all very interesting, because what I was reading, I don't know if you guys, when I was in Alaska, one of the things that we said very often was that your grizzly bears are your inland bears. They refer to bears that don't have access to the coast, so they don't have, the thought was that because they didn't have access to like the salmon and stuff, that they didn't get as big. But what they found was that even if those bears were raised in human care and they had the same exact diet, they still didn't get as big as the bears that live on the coast. There was a lot of talk about Kodiak bears, which may be considered separate subspecies because they are like kind of completely cut off from the other bear populations in the state. And obviously the Kodiak bears get huge. But another one of the things is about like when you're living up north and you're inland like that, and you don't have access to those foods, like it just benefits you more to be a little smaller, like evolutionarily speaking. A bigger body is more to feed. So if you're a bear, it makes sense that you're a little smaller. But anyway, at the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center, the bears that we cared for, our grizzly was our inland grizzly. The one that came from the inland was the smallest of the three by a lot. She was probably about 400 pounds. And our coastal bears, our female was probably about 6 and our male was probably about 800 to 900 pounds. So definitely like a substantial size difference in those bears. Bald eagles, the Tongass is home to like the highest population of bald eagles in the world. And I believe the Tongass even has more bald eagles than like the contiguous lower 48 states, the contiguous lower 48 states combined. There's more bald eagles up there than there are. Yeah, that is a lot of bear. And then here we have the Sitka black-tailed deer. All right, chat. That actually is shockingly just about a perfect hour. These are my references. Look, I did use a book this time, and I don't know if this is the correct format. I just Googled it really quickly, but I did. But that is kind of my general overview. How does everybody feel? Do you feel like you know everything now? Thank you guys for hanging out with me today and learning a little bit about Alaska and the wildlife there and the tundra and the boreal forest and the temperate coastal rainforest. And I will see you guys soon, probably. Thank you for hanging out. It's been fun. Until next time.